Hey everyone, welcome back to Canton Insiders, the quick podcast-like series by Catholics by Intellect U, where we talk to people building, operating, and again, in today's case, governing the Canton Network. So this exact episode closes the season 2 of our podcast, where we featured our partners and broader ecosystem participants. And I think there is no better way to close the season rather than talking to the people stewarding the network itself. So my guest today is Viv, the head of Canton Foundation, basically the unit that independently governs the Canton Network. And I'm expecting to get into the parts of the canton that, let's say, rarely make the headlines or hit the public. Let's see if we can get there. So, Viv, welcome to Canton Insiders.
Thank you, Bogdan. It's my pleasure to be here. My experience of working with people from IntellectU goes back over 7 years, and I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Excited to provide the infrastructure and support Canton Network and Canton Foundation. So to start with the opener question, I think for you it's even more interesting than for anyone because many people in the institutional blockchain space are coming from crypto native environments or DeFi environments, and in your case you're coming more from the traditional enterprise. So tell us a bit how you ended up governing and leading the Canton Foundation.
Wow. So this is me dating myself a little bit, but in the last 25 years, I came from technology first, then business, then into blockchain and DLT. And that was an extension of both my technology background as well as, trying to turn the understanding of blockchain. And at this point, we're talking early 2014. So we're talking Bitcoin and a Bitcoin clone called multi-chain into an actual business. So that was the beginning of my journey. Well, to be fair, that was the beginning of my practical journey because theoretically, I looked at the white paper in 2012 out of professional curiosity. So 25 years in distributed systems and operations across capital markets, private equity, insurance and reinsurance. And again, not just in developed markets, but also emerging and frontier markets. And I think that was a real eye opener for me because the experience of fragmentation, marketplaces, value was, I like to think, really instructional, I would say, and really helped shape the way we think about systems and interconnected systems in particular. Now, it wasn't only institutions, there were also startups in this mix, some of which were my own. And that was my first probable, use of blockchain in anger. So in a way, if I were to summarize, I would say I came to Canton from the types of institutions that Canton is built for. And in terms of, in terms of blockchain and DLT, for example, the last 4+ years, I was at Hedera Foundation, and that is institutional grade tech, but primarily it was DeFi use cases. And then the majority of my focus there was building out the ancillary tooling, the service layer, the capabilities that any network needs for its builders to be successful. And, providing these infrastructure and ancillary tooling is one thing, but how do you measure it? So there's a complementary piece all around the instrumentation, the analytics, and how do you make this quantifiable and meaningful? So if you think of Canton today, the ecosystem is going through such a massive growth, and the foundation's role is to shepherd and make sure that the conditions are right for the Cambrian explosion of sorts that's going to come. So that's roughly the journey that brought me here, but on a personal level as well, I like to go where the work is, where the fire is, so to speak. And, I'd done what I'd set out to do at the Hedera Foundation, and Canton has a long road ahead of us, and I think Canton Foundation is going to be the entity that takes us there, and the fit and the timing were perfect.
Okay, and talking about Hedera Foundation, where you spent more than 4 years as a chief information officer, do you have any experiences or workflows that are going to bring and apply to Canton today?
Absolutely. I would say the foundational substrate is instrument everything, because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. It's literally as simple as that. So if you look at the way Canton Foundation is, like, we have extremely strong governance. We have well-defined bylaws that not just serve the foundation, but also its stakeholders. And it's probably worth talking about what we mean by stakeholders. It's not just the members and the financial players and so forth. It's 100% the builders, the users, the investors, the researchers, the service providers, the entire, ecosystem, and all the people that participate within it. So we have the bylaws to support it. We have the committees that have the dispensation of the bylaws to focus on specific things. But the core to really unlocking the value and the repeatability really comes down to the information systems that match the processes. And then these information systems need to give up signals so that you can understand where you are, how you're doing, against what criteria, and how to improve on this. And without that, any activity that we do today, if we review this in 2 years, it would have fallen into a trough of BAU that we just did it because we've always done it, not because we are trying to achieve a particular business outcome. And that becomes the key. And unless you can look at performance against an outcome, you don't have that accountability. And the one thing that foundation absolutely has to do, and it's imperative that we get this right, is that accountability piece. But then the other side of that, or the complementary side of that, there have to be clear mandates. This is what the foundation does, and how does this trickle down? This is what this team does. This is what this person does. This is what this focus area does in this geography. There needs to be clear mandates. And for every single person in the company, we need to absolutely have unambiguous authority. Like if I need to make a decision today, I know I can do this. If I don't have the authority to do so, I know who does, and this is what I'm going to provide with them. So this way we can turn things into pipelines of systems that are repeatable, scalable, and more than anything, they're predictable and auditable, which is what we are, which is what Foundation stands for. And obviously you need to wrap this in the strong controls. So I think if I were to sum it up, I would say instrument everything. And the other one is strong controls with clear mandates and the authority to actually execute. Because otherwise everything becomes an exception or an override or a special case. And this is how foundations fail from the inside. We break the backbone of neutrality and predictability, and this is how things fail. So I would say those are my two, without a doubt, core lessons that I took away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it fits the name, Canton Foundation, and you're starting from the foundation, so basics, because for most of the institutions, the blockchain is a kind of new thing, and they don't know what to think about it. But really inside, it's still built on the same on the same blocks.
Well, when you talk about blockchain being a new thing, if we ever meet in person, but this for a separate conversation, we should sit down and have a long dissection of just how old some of the components of technology that go into these distributed systems really are. From a computer science perspective, at least.
Yeah, that's true. Still, just for the sake of how it's perceived in social media and announcements. Okay, a little bit tougher question. So you have a lot of major financial players in the tiny room, maybe not the tiny already for the canton, but each of these institutions, they have their own goals, interest in Canton Network. So how do you keep the Canton Foundation's vision balanced and neutral?
So let's talk about vision first. So the thing that we need to look at is who is participating. So yesterday we had the DTCC soft launch of the use case that involved almost 40 partners. Now, these are not the caliber of people who are going to try something out, put it in production, and then decide, in 5 years or not, that this is not the thing that was most suited for what their use case was. So when we talk about vision, the foundation needs to have a very long-term vision. So we're not talking, what I'm going to do for the next quarter or the next year. Like it's a sliding window measured in years. Obviously, there are immediate things that we're tackling on a daily basis, and this is what we're going to deliver this month, this quarter, and so forth. But from a vision perspective, we need to think about where we're going to be, and we are going to be around in the long term, and our members are also going to be around long term. So this comes into, so with that framing, the neutrality piece becomes absolutely imperative, because it is one of, if not the most important pillar of the foundation. We lose this and the entire value and future of the network collapses, because, as I mentioned with our stakeholders, it's not just the members, it's also the users, the investors, the regulators. We have so many. So coordination and balance of this is the priority that we have every day. So how do we openly and fairly serve these stakeholders for the benefit of everyone without favoring any single one? And the mechanics of how Canton Foundation is set up and operates reflect this in a big way. So I mentioned earlier, we have very well-defined, but at the same time, it's not static. We actively maintain our bylaws. And I've been with the foundation 4 and a bit months, we've already changed bylaws twice. So because we are evolving, the foundation is evolving, the network is evolving, what we need to do is evolving, what we are trying to deliver also changes tactically and operationally, obviously not from a strategic perspective. And so we have bylaws that govern how we operate to maintain this neutrality. By design, we have so many committees, for example, around accountability, legal aspects, tokenomics, and these, can be as high level and philosophical, like what constitutes bad behavior, or it could be as tactical as this is the pattern you see on the network that signifies bad behavior, or anything in between. And we have huge levels of engagement in all these committees. Now, and actually, even before I get into that, even on a network infrastructure level, the Canton architecture mirrors this. We have neutrality at the synchronizer level, the global synchronizer, but at the application level, we have absolute sovereignty. And every validator can decide which applications they host on, but every application can decide who they onboard or not. So you have high degrees of control. And where I'm trying to get to basically is that the neutrality piece is a fine line that we walk. So if you think of this okay, let's just take the members. The members might fundamentally compete, like Goldman Sachs might compete with BNY Mellon in some areas. But what Canton Foundation does is we make sure that they can come together and collaborate for the network good. And so to give you an example, DTCC, Goldman Sachs, and Euroclear should all be able to look at the same decision that was made as a collective based on the information we had. And they can all turn around and say, you know what, that was fair, and I can show my regulator why that was fair. Even if they didn't like the decision on a business level because they felt that it wasn't optimal for their particular business needs, at least we can guarantee that what we did was open, fair, and we have the paperwork behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we stay neutral.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that institutions are joining like that actively. Yeah, because Canton provides you with this.
Even from a membership perspective, like we speak with so many institutions that are looking to become members of the Canton Foundation because they actively want to participate in the areas of governance and so forth, because this is really a differentiator.
Yeah, that's for sure. And getting back to my comment and to what you've been talking. So, what do you think, in your opinion, in your insider's opinion, right now are incentives for the institutions to join the network? Why do they usually join it? And what are some of the hesitations? What is the one or two things that still stops them from joining?
So, I would say you can look at this all up and down the stack, like from the very protocol level. You have a network of sovereign networks, and the sovereignty of the networks allow any use case to come across. You could think of Canton Network, especially with its selective privacy and disclosure capabilities on the smart contract language level, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here. You can think of it as a bottom-up public network of sovereign entities, right? Where the network itself is the sum of the entities that participate on it. So from a flexibility perspective, this would be a core reason people would want to join, because you can participate in a way that matches your privacy, your regulatory requirements, your controls that you need on an operational level, or whatever the case might be, whatever your business needs are, whatever your use case needs are, without having any decisions being forced upon you by the network. Equally, you also need to think about the properties of the network, like the reliability, scalability, uptime, all the other ilities. These are solved problems, and we can point at how long the network has been running and so forth, without outages. So I think I would say as you then go from the network one level up and the application level, and you can do whatever you need, and then you go one level up where applications start forming into markets, then that's where it becomes really compelling because this is where the counterparties are. And you have this collection of counterparties that you want to transact with on a network. And you have these governance pieces around it. And if you look at who these other participants are, these are global consequential counterparties, and it's not just, and like the likes of DTCC, but equally you could also have a random mom and pop kind of shop who decided to tokenize their basket weaving service or counsel vaccinations or anything. And the network allows you to find these people, transact with them in a way that suits your business. So I think as you work your way up the stack from an incentives perspective, these are all, I would say, really good reasons to join. You have trusted infrastructure. This is where the counterparties are. You have trusted governance. And more than anything, you can operate in a way that you need to, that you want to, without having to compromise. As for the hesitations, my tongue-in-cheek answer is there's no reason not to be on Canton. Like, what are you thinking? However, I think this becomes quite a nuanced question because whether or not one should even use a blockchain, whether it's Canton or not, this becomes an internal subjective decision. And it needs to be grounded in what makes sense for the business and the use case. So I think there are a lot of reasons to join. Come join, come to the Canton Foundation website, understand how to become a member, and let's go. Let's build.
Okay, yeah. I like that there is no reason not to join Canton Network. So we will maybe use it in some marketing materials for the Catholics and Intellect EU. Thank you for that. And maybe about the use cases. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this episode is recorded right after the DTCC trades live on Canton. So after July 15th.
Yeah.
So it was pretty big, but still, like in your point of view, when does it get real? So when the network, in your point of view, stops being the end of collection of experiments and pilots and actually becomes the production infrastructure.
I think it's a matter of point of view. So, from Canton Foundation's perspective, running the network with all its governance and all its guarantees that we can give, and I need to be quite specific about the nuance when I talk about guarantees, right? Because we facilitate the governance of the network. We are also super validator operator, so we participate in consensus and so forth. When you think so through that lens, when we talk about production, Canton Network is already production. Now, if on the other hand, I'm a big bank in Central Europe and I'm experimenting with real estate, tokenization plus, I have a stable coin for the cash leg and I want to do quick retail property transactions, then I would use a completely different lens. So I think if I were to try and, you know, give a high level answer there, I would say the moment the transaction matters more than the demo, that's when you've hit production. This means you have real obligations, a real settlement, you have real balance, you have real movement of assets or movement of value. And I think, and this part is a little bit subjective, but you also have real regulation behind it and you have real mechanisms to unwind. Because the aspect of institutional does come down to that access to recourse. And if you look at some of the public chains like Ethereum, for example, if I send, ETH to the wrong address, that's it, it's gone. What's my access to recourse? Like in a court of law, in a traditional banking enterprise, if I go and send cash to the wrong place, I can at least get in touch with the bank. There's someone I can speak with, and there are mechanisms in place. So I think things stop becoming experiments or pilots or the slightly irreverent description I've heard before as science projects once you have real obligations, real settlement, all the things I spoke about, and access to things that people take for granted today on the consumer side and the business side, which is recourse. So I think that's when it becomes. I would say if you want to use three broad, criteria, I would say first of all, check who the counterparties are. Did it all happen inside the same app, or was this cross-institutional? Who are these institutions, right? And then also look at the volumes. Is this, we did a test transaction of a PVP on FX for euros into dollars. Yep, that worked great. Everything's settled. Everyone goes home now. Or did we just put through 5.3 trillion in value? They're two different things. So the scale of it really comes into place. And then also, it comes down to how the regulator, compliance team, audit team treats infrastructure. Because if you think about the cloud, like if this was 2008, and Amazon was talking about this thing that was coming around the corner. In 2009, they launched, I think it's 2009, they launched AWS, and you only had VMs, if I remember correctly, and storage and a couple of other things. I was working for Experian at the time, and the compliance team was flat no. It's like, this is non-sovereign. We don't know where our data lives. We have no answers for any of this. I think once, and now you look at, literally the I would say even quadrillions of bytes of data that go through workflows across all the cloud providers, both public and private clouds and so forth globally. This was just not a thing, right? So I think once your compliance team is also happy with it, then you're pretty much production. Now, I think the other piece as well, which again, I'll keep coming back to, like the real bedding in of what constitutes production also comes down to the properties of the network, and governance has got to be predictable, reliable, and it needs to be boring. You don't need to go and look it up and go, right, do I trust this? What do I think about this? It's just there. And it's just there, and you're comfortable enough to just use it. And then as you sort of move out further, once you have a network you can trust and you have all these properties of your use case, then how does your use case talk to someone else's? And this is where markets form. And this, again, I think is one of the absolute, boons of the Canton Network. So you have standards, you have operations that are dependable. And again, people should find this boring. They shouldn't even be thinking about this. They shouldn't be thinking about this in terms of, I put a workload on a blockchain. It's more so, my business needs this outcome, and this is the application that does it. Doesn't matter whether this is running in your data center or in the cloud on a public infrastructure or dedicated host on the blockchain. It comes down to business outcomes, and that is production. And today, that is Canton already. Like why did DTCC choose Canton?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that answered it perfectly. Thank you. I have one more question for you I wanted to ask, and I have something interesting coming after that question.
Sure.
So the question is, what's one use case or application that would make you think this is exactly why Canton exists?
So for me, there's no, okay, I'll answer this in two ways. My slightly tongue-in-cheek answer is the most exciting one is one we haven't seen. And the reason, and by this, what I mean is we have a big convergence of regulation. The regulator is getting more comfortable with blockchain and are actually beginning to make statements that give a lot more regulatory certainty. We're now seeing a lot more I would say the evolution of thinking. And I pause slightly there because I shouldn't really call this evolution. I think it's more so people looking at different ways in which business outcomes can translate into applications, and specifically applications that are best suited for a blockchain. It could be as simple as, if I move to blockchain, I eliminate reconciliation. This reduces my turnaround time with my accounts receivable, so I get paid quicker, and then I can put this money to work quicker, and so forth. So it could be as simple as cost of goods sold or operational efficiencies or anything in between. Or it could be a brand new use case. And the thing that I always think about is the day Stripe met Google Maps, you had Uber. So are we waiting on the next Uber? I know that's an oversimplification, but in principle, are we waiting for the next Uber? I'm waiting for the next Uber. So that's what I'm excited about. However, more than that, more than a single application, it's the pattern. Now, if you think of Canton, again, from the protocol upwards, the composability, the sub-transaction privacy, and the fact that you can take your Google Maps and Stripe and create Uber. So speaking about the Canton network in particular, we have Hi-Fi, which is one of the apps on the network. So if I want, I can get paid in USDC stablecoin. I can then, like part of my salary, I can then take the stablecoin. I can use one of our exchanges on chain to get Canton coin. I can then use this Canton coin, and I can, go to a prediction market also on chain. Alternately, I could decide that I want to use a portion of this here, but I want to put another portion into a lending protocol. And with the yield that I get from this lending protocol, I want to participate in fractionalized securities. So the macro or the broader picture here is, as these all converge and come together with the regulatory certainty and the certainty of the network and its governance and the confidence that those two bring, settlement becomes 24/7. I can now decide how I use my money and where I put it to work. And that slightly libertarian view of the freedom and what this unlocks, I think that pattern is is where we're going. That's the holy grail, and that's what I want to see.
Okay, so it's not just one use case or application. You would like to see a pattern, and when there are patterns more and more, that's what.
And see, that's the thing. That's the other thing as well. Like once you start seeing patterns generally form into buckets, and then once you can bucket a pattern, people can say, yes, that really works for me in A, B, and C, but here's the D, E, and F where it doesn't work. And that in and of itself can be the impetus and the stimulus for new ways of thinking or new use cases that could evolve. So they all tie together. And I think this is where network effects on a trusted network really make the difference. Because there's that certainty that it's worth spending the time and spending the effort and spending the mental and physical cycles to reason about these things, because there's something there worth doing. So, and that's the Canton Network.
Okay, that's Canton. Thanks for the take. And just for everyone, this is the last episode, and I prepared something. I believe it should be interesting, but let's see how it goes. So there will be a quick blitz for you, like just quick fire. Yeah.
Sure.
Quick fire answers. I have 6 questions prepared, so let's start with it.
Sure.
So, first question. You're talking to the CFO at a major bank who still sees blockchain as a science experiment. What do you say to them in one sentence?
What is the opportunity cost of you not participating?
Okay. Next question. Canton in 3 words.
Privacy, neutrality, composability.
Nice. Next question. Public or private blockchains in 2035?
Neither. Federated. Permissioned where it needs to be, institutions, governments, etc. Permissionless where it needs to be, stable coins, basket weaving tokens, and that boundary will go away.
Okay, federated. I take it. One interest you pursue today beyond blockchain?
Believe it or not, my retirement goal is to make furniture out of wood.
Wow.
I love to build things with my hands. I do a lot of DIY. This, again, we could have a very long conversation about. I do plumbing, I do electrical, I do tiling, I do flooring, concreting.
Wow. Okay, that's sorry, I'm impressed with this answer more than your answers about Canton, but okay, next question. Biggest lesson from the moment you stepped into the role?
Empower people. Let them know what they are supposed to do. Trust them to do it. Give them the authority to do it. And then support them. Make sure that they can actually do it.
Sounds cool. And the last one. One word, just one word that describes the future of financial markets.
Composable.
Composable. Okay. Yeah, that was the Blitz. Know everyone how you enjoyed it. Thank you, Viv. And I guess that's it for today. So that's been Viv Diwakar, the head of Canton Foundation. Thank you for coming in. This was the closing episode of Canton Insiders Season 2. yeah, keep up with the Catholics and Intellect EU. By the way, we are ready to support you. You heard the reasons to join the network. We are ready to support you from the infrastructure, operations, application side, basically anything. I will leave the links below to Viv, Canton Foundation, and Canton Network in the description. I guess you all know about this, but still, I will leave it. Once again, thank you, Viv. That was the perfect discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to season 3.
Okay, yeah, that's nice to hear. Stay tuned, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.